welcome the keynote speaker and Mr. Adesua Adeni Insha, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. Yeah, good morning, ICAN fellows and people here and online. Very pleased to be honored to speak with you today. And again, my name is Adeni Insha, or Adeni Insha for short. And I'm a senior director with Microsoft, and I've been there for probably about 8 years. So what we'll be talking about today is really AI. This is the agenda that we're going to have. I'm probably going to speak for about 35 to 45 minutes. There's a lot of slides here, and then again, there's an upload of the slides to follow along. I will take questions. There'll probably another 45 minutes, but if you have questions, or I might ask some questions also, so I'll just try to make it a little bit more interactive. Okay? So we'll start with AI and talk about AI technologies. Then we'll go into how we apply that in accounting and finance, the benefits and challenges, future trends, and conclusions, and Q&A. And some of the stuff that I'll be talking about, especially when we get to accounting and finance, is how we're running our organization in Microsoft. Oh, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So, there's no surprise, AI is transforming the world. Unless you're under a rock, even if you're under a rock, AI is still there. As the mantra for this ICAN theme is, or the theme is, get on board or get left behind. So it's every industry, AI is really transforming the world, as you can know. I'm going to first start and first ask, what is AI really? AI is not new, right? It's been around for about 70 years. So in the in the 1950s, the field of computer science that seeks to really create intelligent machines is really AI, right? It's been around. What it is the computing infrastructure never caught up with it, right? And then in 1959, you had a subset of AI called machine learning. So really, you take data, you kind of train the data, and you have algorithms, and you have what you call supervised or unsupervised, or even reinforcement learning. Supervised means that you take data, and then you train it and you label it, right? And then you can predict it, so you can say, hey, that's a cat, or that's a dog, right? And then if you see something that's similar to that, it'll make its best guess. Unsupervised is when you put a bunch of things together, and then you let the computer or the algorithm, the system, actually group it and categorize it. And then reinforcement learning is where you put humans in the loop and you kind of train the computer on more. Now, there was what you call a winter between the 1959 and 2017, where it was more like, yeah, AI is maybe science fiction, yeah, it's great, there's element of statistics and computer science and math in it. But in 2017 is when there was a paper that was written by some folks in the University of Toronto, Iliad and a few other folks, and they came up with this deep learning, which is basically combining neural networks. So if you look at how the brain works, there's a lot of neurons in the brain, right? And you have edges and nodes. And when your brain can't handle something, it sends it to another part of your brain to say, hey, move your left hand or your foot or what have you. Same thing with deep learning. So you have all these neurons, right? And if they're not sure how to handle things, they take that input and pass it to the other neuron. And so there's massive amount of computing that actually makes this work. And so unstructured data like images, text and images, and voice were able to be used. And so within that paper, there was a big unleashing of information and models, right? A lot of those folks became part of Google, right? That's our competitor, right? In 2021, we worked with a company called OpenAI, that's Microsoft, and we kind of put like about a lot of billions of dollars, and about 50%, close to about 50% of that company. And that's when you really got a lot of massive improvement. So basically, generative AI is even a subset of deep learning and AI. And really, basically what it is you really able to use, the computer is able to actually take input from your voice, from your text, and create and generate. That's where you have the generative AI. Generative, imaginative, or creative content. So now you have what you call this large language models and the patterns, right? And what happens is now if you go in, you can now make, it's trained on massive amounts of data and computing. And now you see ChatGPT as an application that's being used. So I want to first ask you guys a question, right? Any CFOs here or chief accounting officers? One question I wanted to ask is, what do you think are the success traits of chief financial officers or chief accounting officers? Anybody? Just want a couple of success traits that you want to offer? What's that? Increase the bottom line. Okay. What are some of the other successful drivers of a successful CFO? What makes them so successful? What characteristics? Or what kind of skills do they have to have?
Business acumen.
Business acumen?
Agility.
Agility, right? That's great. Strategic thinking? That's great. Any more takers? All right. Well, so what we did is we asked Copilot, what are the success characteristics? And let's see what it says. All right. So as you can see, you've got business acumen, communication skills, adaptability, problem-solving skills, strategic vision. You mentioned it, right? We just asked what's successful characteristics. The same thing with the chief accounting officers: leadership skills, strategic thinking. Why am I doing this? Why I'm bringing this to you is that there's a whole lot of information. There's a whole lot of data. There's a whole lot of things that you can now glean. If you're studying anything as an accountant, or you're an engineer, or you're an architect, you should at least start with GPT or Copilot and say, what does it say? So you know what it is, but you don't have to spend 2 weeks or 1 week discovering information. If you're an auditor, you can actually go to the web. You can also go, on the left-hand side, you can see you can flip the switch to work. When you flip the switch to work, depending on the kind of company you have, any information, data, video, data, structured data that you have, it'll pull that information up and answer the question. That's the power of AI right now. Of course, you have to work with maybe some consultants or some companies to get that done, but you can have information on the web that can be gleaned or in your company, especially data that's not on the web. So take advantage of that. So we're going to move on to AI technologies. So about 2 or 3 years ago, you realized that GPT is the fastest application that uses LLM, and within a few months, it's the fastest consumer product in history, right? It runs on what we call the Azure cloud, backed by, can you guys still hear me? Yeah, Cosmos DB, which is a database structure, and then developed on GitHub, which is basically a place where you put your code repository. Okay. This is going a little bit deeper into how does this thing really work, right? Don't get really hung up on that. Just follow the data flow. So the very first thing when you ask Microsoft 365 or a Copilot or any kind of information, right? It could be, just talking to it or typing or video. The user prompts, and then Copilot accesses that graph. Remember, the graph is all your emails, your files, your meeting chats, your calendars, your contacts, all the information, video, what have you. Then Copilot sends it back to the LLM for processing. The Copilot receives the LLM response, accesses the graph, and provides you with the information. Now, when we first came out with these LLMs, they used to hallucinate. They weren't always 100% accurate, right? Just because a computer gives you information does not mean it is right, because data are garbage in, garbage out. So you need to do what we call grounding. You ground it in the truth. Grounding means you're going to say, look, I know you might get all this stuff from the internet, but want to make sure that it is right. So what we'll do is we'll make sure we use something called retrieval augmented generation to ensure that it gives you the right things, and it also ensure that it has the right responsibility. And so based on that, it will give you the right information. Okay? That's what we call by grounding. So if you hear grounding, it's just a matter of how we make sure that the response that's coming back to you is going to tell you the truth. So we have what we call the Copilot stack, and really at the bottom is the cloud. You've got to have the cloud edge, the foundation. Your AI infrastructure, which is your network, your compute, and your storage. And then you have your data, right? After the data, you have the foundation models. The foundation models could be the LLMs, Gemini, it could be Meta, it could be different ones. Then you go up the chain to the orchestration. The orchestration is how these things work. It takes your prompt, and then what it does, it gives you the information, it processes it. And then at the top level, you have on the left-hand side, like the Microsoft Copilot, could be a Copilot for finance. There's Copilot for Dynamics. There's Copilot for M365, for GitHub. But you also have your Copilot that you can build. That's on the right-hand side, where you can find consultants to help you build that, or system integrators to help you build this Copilot. And it's just for your organization. And for accounting or finance, you can build the ones that are germane to accounting and finance. And at the top, you have safety and security, and we'll get more into how do you make this thing safe. On the right-hand side, you have the Copilot Studio. If you want to create your own Copilot, you have the Visual Studio for all the code, if it's C, C++, Python, and you have the GitHub that has a repository. Now, the interesting thing is, you guys may not know, but over 50% of our new code that's developed is developed by AI right now, not humans. What happens is now, if you're a developer and you're building any of these things, your productivity increases significantly. Because now maybe you were able to, maybe in a month, write a piece of code that you do something for finance, but now you can do it in just minutes, right? You can test it, and you can do it in a lot of industries. The same thing with security. If there's information that's coming out, some data, bad actors are in there, we use Microsoft Copilot to actually explain what is going on. Because if you look out for security, you have to understand that you can't be totally secure. You can try to be secure, but you have to make sure you do NIST 5 CSFs, right? You identify a threat, you detect a threat, you monitor the threat, you defend, and you respond. So all those things can be done using a Copilot. Question?
Just quick observation. Why are there only 2 dots in the whole of Africa and the left upper part?
Yeah, we need to talk to all the head of state and presidents in Africa and get an answer, because it's a very valid question. But what's happening is, if you look at how, and the question, I'll repeat the question. The gentleman in front said, why are there only 2 dots, 2 people in Africa? Well, it's very expensive first to locate data centers, and it's always a return on investment you have to look at. And say, if we're going to spend maybe $100 million, what is the return we're going to get? They cost a lot of money. Now, I'll give you an example. Before 2017, the data centers, if you look at how computers run, you build a data center, compute network storage, you serve that, you write the code once, you can duplicate it and sell it, right? So let's say I spend $10 million, I can sell it for $1 billion over the next 10 years. I don't even have to change anything. I just put you on a support contract, 15% a year. I don't have to write too much more code. AI is different. When you build AI, there are 2 things that happens. You have to first train the data on NVIDIA machines that are like a $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 each. So the data centers now have the GPUs of NVIDIA. That's why their stock has gone up. Now, let's say you built the Copilot, and 1,000 or 1 million people use it. Guess what? Every time they use it, there's something called inference. You have to pay again. So that scaling, you don't get that scaling that you got before, where if I build something for 10 million, I can get a lot of money over the next 5, 10 years. With this one, every time they're inferring, you're paying money. So what happens? The cloud companies or the companies have to throttle, have to say, we can't allow you to do this all the time, because if we do that, we're not going to make any money. So we have to figure out, if that data is there before, could I go and get it from a cache? Or could I maybe slow it down? Or could I use a small language model? It's a long way of saying, if we want to do that, we have the money in Africa. We just have to make sure we divert it from, I want to be very politically conscious here, from where we put it in, to say, hey, come over and come and invest in Nigeria. Because if you think about it, a country like Nigeria has more oil reserves than UAE. We could build 4 UAEs, but a lot of that money goes to waste. So part of it is, I'll call it reallocation of capital. Then politically, you will be talking to the right people. All right? Okay. Good question, though. So now let's go to accounting and finance. One question the CEO normally asks the CFO is, where's my money? Or can you find me more money? Right? What, you find the money, but what are you going to do with the money? Are you going to put it in a bank and then 5% here, or maybe 20% in Nigeria? I don't know what the interest rate is in Nigeria right now. Because wherever there's risk, there's return. But you have to make sure you can allocate that money pretty well. If you look at a company, you guys they're all accountants or financial people, it's not just putting the money anywhere. You have to understand, is it going to be higher than the cost of capital? Right? So how do I allocate that? Right? Today, when you think about accounting and finance, there's a lot of bottlenecks. There will be multiple handoffs sometimes. There's complex contractual agreements, multiple systems of record, not just in accounting, I'm talking about whole organization. So the CFO has to be, since they have to manage those funds. So you have the accounting part and you have the finance part. But if you look at how do you measure the outcomes of a company, from finance you can say, hey, I can look at it from days to close, OPEX efficiencies. I can look at what time it takes me to, to generate time, or even my day sales outstanding, or cash conversion cycle, when do I get my money, how fast do I get it? If it's customer service, you look at time to resolution, case volume, legal, this is research time, cycle time in manufacturing, because you guys are all, you're all managing all this, right? So you want to understand, how do I get this to work? Every single part of this, you put AI in to get efficiencies, so that you don't become a cost. You are now more of like almost like a profit center, okay? So you have to think that way. I don't have the statistics here, but our stock, not the stock, revenue has gone from about 100 billion to 200 billion in about 5 to 6 years. When I joined Microsoft, it was right around about 100 billion. It's now about 200 billion. The staff for accounting and finance has only gone up about 10%. Just think about that for a minute. Revenue up 200%, the staff went up only by 10%. There's something happening. This stuff that we're talking in modern finance and AI-enabled finance, when I sat with Amy Hu's organization, some of the directors there that are running this program, 900 companies saw this last year. So and then 35,000 accounting leaders around the world, they see this. So you're seeing it now. What are some of the impacts? Like quote to push, quote to cash. Here are some of the impacts. It takes we get 22% reduction in case handling time. 60% contact with errors flagged within 10 days. We have AI-enabled projects in every single one of these areas. Smart cash, interactive use, invoice error detection, from record report. It takes, there's 100% inventory reserve calculation. You don't have to be doing all those reclasses at the end of the month, right? You don't have to be doing all those crazy asset allocations, right? Commercial contract reviews, reconciliation. They're AI or co-pilot used for every single part. Just like the chairman said, AI is a part of finance and accounting now. Believe it. It's a part of it. It's a tool. Just like when you went for abacus to calculators, and accountants say, oh, wait a minute, I can do this. I don't have to do it by hand. I can do it in Excel. You got to be using AI. If you're not using AI, you're not doing accounting right or finance right. Tax and treasury. So VAT, document review, 75% savings, 22% in VAT reconciliation, 97% in reduction. We can go to planning and analysis, more data. These are real data from Microsoft. We're not making this up. This is real stuff, folks. 50% average reduction in forecasting, 99% forecast accuracy is what I said. There's so many, in fact, they probably have as many AI and data scientists as accountants in the Amy Hu's organization. Okay? Reduction in data reconciliation time. So machine learning, data reconciliation, earnings summary. You know how you look at notes? Notes could be 100 pages. Notes to the financial statement. It takes a while to read those things. You can summarize that thing in minutes. There's no reason for you to spend 2-3 days figuring it out. I'm like, because I remember when I used to look at it, I'm like, oh my God, this thing in there, I have to figure out, oh gosh, what is the off-balance sheet? I have to read all those notes and start doing that. You don't need to do that anymore. You can use AI for that now, the co-pilot. Let it summarize and categorize for you. If it doesn't do what you want, put a custom co-pilot build it. Right? Again, These are examples, real examples of the applications that are being used, right? The AI enablement in commercial contract reviews, generating first draft, and the savings, the impact. This is real stuff. Same thing with AI-enabled process improvement in procure-to-pay, planning and analysis. It's all over the map. So if you're not doing this, you should be doing it. The thing is, when are we going to do it? So I'm going to repeat the latest question. She was concerned about data privacy. Data privacy should be a big deal so that your competitors don't get your data. Remember at the beginning I said there's two types of copilot? There's a regular one and a custom copilot. The custom copilot is the one where you now do what you call retrieval augmented generation, and you ground it to your data. The other thing you do, if you're using the right, let's say you're using, for example, our platform, there's something called encryption at rest. And encryption when the data is flowing, and then encryption when you send it. So in transit and at rest. That's part of it. The other thing you have to do is you have to monitor it. Like for example, when you have those data, you have to ensure that you know who has access to the data, right? You have access to the data and you know it has to be protected. And you have to have the right, well-architected framework, right? That's part of the thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you make sure you have things like that. But the important thing is you ground it and you make sure you have the right infrastructure. You get them to have the right data protection for you. Anything that you see in 365, if you buy, I'll give you an example. You buy what you call E5, that gives you those kind of protection. So for example, if I'm writing mail or I'm doing something in Excel, I could put a right protecting that says highly confidential. If I send it to anybody, they can't send it to someone else. They can't copy it. That is a right protection. They can't even do a screen print. That's another example of you do that. So make sure you have something called like E5, the highest level, and then whatever document you're using, you highly classify. You have different classification. But in the back end, those data, which is very good, when you're going through the data modeling, you have to ensure that that data is responsible, is transparent, is secure. Those are the kind of things. So a lot of this, it's not really technology that's hard. It's the processes and the people around it. So good question. Some of the benefits. Productivity makes you faster, efficiency, effectiveness, fraud detection, corporate advisory. It goes on. The lady mentioned data privacy. Handling data financial systems with AI systems raises concerns about data privacy. That was our concern. Right? Accuracy and reliability, we talked about using grounding. Ethics and compliance. The big thing about AI is it has to be responsible. It has to be ethical. It has to have the right bias and fairness. Integration cost is costly. Like I mentioned, it's very costly to run these systems, preparing them and testing them. What you have to do is balance the speed with the quality, and sometimes you may have to use a small language model. Sometimes not everything needs to be an LLM. There are APIs that have been running, our programs have been running. Let the LLM just go and call those things. You don't have to build everything. As a matter of fact, you're building everything that's expensive, right? So you have to take a very thoughtful process to do that.
Yeah, good question. I'm going to address your question in two parts. I'm going to leave the national part out for a second, and I'm going to go with what is more practical, which is basically, I look at you guys as distinguished finance leaders, accounting leaders of the country. You're responsible for those financial reporting. What you do is very important for the organization. You have the muscle, you have the power, you have the money. I think you should, this is what I think, you don't have to do it, is have an AI strategy for every company that's listed on the stock exchange. And your auditors, you talk with your auditors internally and externally, and say, we need to have this. The key thing that we said, data is the flow. The data is in so many places, it's not structured in the data. You mentioned the fact that they couldn't even, they couldn't even find the names of the people. That problem was solved 20 years ago. Every database that has something called like a phonetics. So if I say John, I spell it different ways. As long as it's John or John or whatever, it has that in the system. It's not even that's not even AI. That's just simple. Maybe the person who designed that system did not use the right thing. Right? I mean, if any DBA is over here, it's been solved 20 years ago. That's not even an AI I remember when I used to implement ERP, PeopleSoft, Oracle, we used to spend years, 2 years, 3 years. We would test that. Sometimes we had tests that were over 1,000 lines long. I mean, project plans. We had tons of them. We do unit testing, we do system testing, we do performance testing. Then we talk with the users and say, show me what you do every single day and every single month. And then what we do regression testing. Before we put anything in production, it's heavily tested. So like they say, oh, show me. Can I, I'm going to put my name in, can you find it? That's a simple test that should have been caught in testing. But I'm going to go higher up, is have that strategy, lay it out, work amongst yourself, figure out, get experts in, and then you take it to the government. The government has their own. That's a totally different one, because you got to fight politics with logic, right? You have to be logical, or you have to be political. But you can, within the organization, you can talk with the CEO and the board and say, and I always say, if you want to make a change, one of the fastest ways to make a change is to figure out how much money you're spending on making mistake and doing and trying to correct mistakes or errors. Or what is stopping you from being able to sell more? Your cycle time is longer, right? Your production is less because you're just going through a whole lot of things that don't make sense. So my point is, you need to take it up to the organization, have a strategy, and enable it, bring the right people in. Because nobody is a reservoir of knowledge. We're all good in one thing or the other. So you bring experts from different areas and come together and form a strategy, implement that strategy, and that strategy may not be right, but you have a way to measure it, and you course correct. Kind of like the PDO cycle, you plan, you do, you control, you act, right? That's just the way I would say that.
Oh, GPT is the same thing as a Copilot. She said no. I was like, okay. Then she said, ChatGPT is on its own. Okay, fine. Then I was just making fun of myself. The next message she sent is that one should be very careful in using GPT, that professors are now using AI detectors to detect papers written with AI. So they know as students are being smart, lecturers are getting smart.
Absolutely right.
Because lecturers were once students.
Yeah.
So
So they have to think, they think like you. So absolutely, yeah.
and another thing I want to buttress is, you said something about auditing the AI. Yes, it happened in my own car. It's still something that is still
But you still have to validate it.
Yes. We have the IT department, and when they needed something on AI, I think they contracted it out to somebody. So my boss just said I should check it as they started. I think as at that time they thought they were almost done. So when I was now picking all those data, I was like, no, this doesn't.
Yeah.
I was pointing out the
You were able to
differences.
get
Exactly.
the difference.
So it got to a point they were like, okay, let's bring in the IT department.
Yeah.
So that they can fix whatever we need. And they are still going on with it for over a year now.
No, that's
They
good.
get to fix it.
That's good.
So it's just a
No, that's good. Thank you for the comments. They're great. That's a great. I like your perspective. So yes, you're right. The GPT. So what we did is we changed the name when GPT first came out. It was more like the chat, just the chat. The Copilot is a broader term. It's an assistant that helps you in anything that you do. It uses an LLM. So GPT is just the interface that OpenAI use. That's what got the worldwide stuff. But the Copilots are now in every application. We've infused it everywhere. You really should have an assistant for any key function you have in an organization so that you're efficient and you're effective in what you do. So the Copilot is a broader term meaning an assistant that uses an LLM. GPT is just an interface that uses an LLM. Okay? We mentioned Nigeria. How do you do Nigeria? I'll be more than happy if you have a strategy in Nigeria or your company for me to come and talk to help them. I may be able to persuade them a little bit. I don't know. So the organization or Nigeria wants a strategy. Happy to help. Thank you.
So the vendor risk management side, right? And we're looking at information security and those control areas. So, because this is something I'm dealing with right now. How can I get, for instance, ChatGPT 4.0, which is available to me, but
policy, you have to have the right controls around it, right? So you have the policy. Then you can go in and say, okay, what is it that I would achieve? You have to have a control objective or objective. The objective may be to say, hey, I want to see what vendor has been able to, maybe the accuracy in supplying what I need. That would be one thing. The other thing could be maybe how many mistakes do they make, how many errors? I don't know. I'm just making some of this thing up. Or you may ask and say, what are the things you first could start and shift it to your company. You know, because when you look at that co-pilot, there is the web and there's work. Work is whatever you have in your organization. You shift it. You first could start with the web to say, out there, give me all the kind of considerations I need to be concerned about the vendor, risk management. Then you can say, point to an organization. You say, go to maybe ICAN or go to maybe the supply chain, whatever. What does a good vendor look like? Right? You start with that. It gives you stuff, right? Then you go into the work. You set it to work. And say, look at the policy that I have for vendors. And then create an audit questionnaire based on that. You may not be able to do it, but you start with something, then you can go in and then you can start adding yours to it. So sometimes it's iterative. Then when you get that right, you can now put that and do a custom co-pilot for it and call it vendor co-pilot. So there's some steps. Yeah.
No, there's another question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I just wanted to add on an entrepreneurial angle. I see a big opportunity here for us, especially as a people, if we know how we can tap into this. As we're talking about the voice recognition and all those things, I think it's a thing that we can pull resources together, even among small investors. You know, pull certain resources together and come up with apps that can actually do some of these translations, you know, and once you do them, you get them tested, then you'll be surprised. Most of these big companies like Google, Microsoft, and all that, sometimes they don't reinvent the wheel. They look for small, you know, entrepreneurs that develop certain apps. What they do, they just buy you over. So that's a great opportunity, even if we interpret that, because I work for a company that did that before. When you develop a program, a software, you test it, it's functioning, they see you as a competitor. So what they do, they just buy you over. So for some of us that are able to pull resources together, it doesn't have to be a big company. And you can pull these apps together, almost very absolute cost. Yeah, I just thought I'd share that.
No, that's absolutely true. That is so true. A lot of innovation comes from small, or even maybe a so-called third world. There's a lot of innovation that comes from the third world. It's called reverse innovation, right? Because they don't have as much money, and sometimes they'll have things that are $5,000. Instead, it's $5 million there, but they can read X-ray scans. They can do tons of stuff. Because sometimes, you know, when you go through the school of hard knocks, it makes you a little bit smarter. Sometimes. Absolutely. Thank you.
Good job. A round of applause for our speaker.
Well, I think my experience is a little bit on the other way around. I've been kind of entrepreneurial, you know, from very early years, and I knew I was going to do some kind of business. You know, initially I thought I was going to be an architect, you know, or a pharmacist, but nevertheless, I ended up in accounting for very good reasons. So, but while I was in corporate, you know, while I was in corporate, I was already running my business, you know, after licensing and all that. So I was running my accounting firm, and like you said, you know, with family and everything, you know, so I was financing the accounting practice from my salary that I was earning from corporate. So most of the revenue we generated was between my landlord, you know, and the part-time staff that I hired, you know. So but my strategy was actually, it was funny because when I applied to the Fortune 500 company, my firm was one of the referee company that I use on my resume. As, and they ask you, is it okay to contact your employer? I said no. Because until you give me an offer, you can just contact my employer. So, and but it was a legitimate accounting firm and everything. You go check it out, everything is fine, so no qualms there. So my strategy was, once I started losing enough money that is close to or more than my salary, then I knew it was time to go. So I navigated that, and that was happening. So now, every now and then, they try to lay off a few echelon in the company. So I'll go into some kind of fasting and praying. Could you please, Lord, let them lay me off, and for one good reason, so I can get a little bit of severance pay. So then I can move to my practice, fully. Unfortunately, they didn't lay me off. So I had to leave. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Do you have any other No, I was going to
I think more around something hard to understand. You following up on what was able to say. What was the experience like getting started?
Oh yeah, good afternoon. I have to do this standing. This is to honor this great man, Mr. Adeyemo. Most times I wonder, but every time I wonder, I say it because we have something in common. I met Mr. Adeyemo 2021. During COVID, I have to work from home, and I had time, to myself. And I said to myself, it's high time I link up, with ICAN, because ICAN gave me everything regarding this profession. And I stormed, on the website, and I saw your number there, and I was praying. When you see chairman, president, you know the way we revere. And I was praying that God, this man should just pick the call. And at the first trial, he answered. And he said, coincidentally, I'll be coming to the DMV area, which is Maryland, for a meeting, and then we met. And from that very moment, I knew that it's not coincidence that I have to meet this man. And he invited me, to the ICAN conference for that year. I attended, and I took everything I learned from that conference, I took it back home to Maryland. And that gave the bet to our company, Vincent Pro. And when we started the company, the first thing I did is, God, why did you call me to start this business? That takes me to the niche. And he said to me, Ayo, you came to this country, and for 2 years, you drove Uber. You did DoorDash. You did CNA. There are so many people that would come to this country that way. They don't have to do the same thing that you did. Help them through this company. And for that, our own focus, those we seek to help, are mainly immigrants. If you come to our company as a US-born citizen, we'll offer our services to you. But every time we push our promotions out there, our targets are immigrants. We have well over 80 million immigrants in this country. 80 million. And by the time we combine their children, we are looking at well over 120 million. And they need help. The better immigrants get in this country, the better for the United States. And I'll say this to you, that this is God's own country, and for that reason, it is yours too, as long as you make up your mind to stay and live and bless this country. And that is what we are doing with FinServ Pro. If you come into this country and you are looking at how to regularize yourself, the company is here to help you. So that is, our strength, looking at those that we are called to help and create a business around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all the three panelists. Now that you have shared how you got started and how you found your niche, let's move on to a key area that some of the entrepreneurs will be wondering at. How you tackle some of the first challenges running, getting a startup. Like when you let's go over to Mr. Ademo at this point now. When you first started your practice, what were some of the key challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the key challenge that I faced was finance. And the way I overcame it was determination. Okay, when I decided to start my company, I knew I was going to start with tax practice and, of course, going to accounting. Coincidentally, then I was working at Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut, chain. And so what I had to do was I had a little savings, but that money was not enough to set up a practice. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I started my practice from home. I was living in what we would call efficiency then. That would be a studio in an apartment. So this is funny because I started with a one-leg stool table. If you've been to a restaurant, there's one of those one-leg stools table. Actually, my area manager is one of those things when you have some of this furniture, after a while we discard them because we want to bring new ones. So I asked my manager, can I grab one of these things here? He looked at me, said, sure. I don't know what you want to do with it. I'm like, don't worry. So I took that one table. Then a friend of mine actually gave me one of those multi-function fax machine. And this is one of those that use roller papers. It's not one of those that has main paper. So once I registered the company, I did that. So then I had to invest in the tax software. So the first tax software that I purchased, I didn't have enough money to buy the complete package where you process the return and it spits out the entire form. So the one I was able to buy was the one that prints the numbers on a plain paper. Then you purchase separately what they call transparency. The transparency is where the form designs are on, right? Just like those film transparency. So once I print the tax return, then I put the plain number paper over the transparency, then you make photocopy. So when you make photocopy, then you have your 1040, Schedule C, or this or that, or that, or that, or that. So that was how I got started. But I was determined that I was going to do it and I was going to succeed. So that was so funding was one of the main challenges. But as I kept at it, then I stabilized.
Thank you, Mr. Adiomo. Those in the audience, please feel free as you go along to share your own perspective from your experience. If you're running a firm feel free. But before we get to that, let's continue on with the growth strategy question. Mr. Okafor, what role does technology play in growing your practice and today, and how should new startup, new accounting firms, how should they approach investing in technology?
Excellent question. Yeah. I started like in 2009, so almost 15 plus years now. Back then, the first thing that came to my mind is data integrity, data security, and not as bad as it is today in terms of, combating, hackers and all that stuff. So with a little bit of my background in IT, we have an in-house, server network that we do. But when it comes to tax, I have it on my local drive just to mitigate any potential. Because, doing tax, you have all the personal information right there. Not just the SS, the bank account, you name it. And then a couple of years down the road, as we grew, I said, well, we have to go cloud-based. And even with that also, there's an exposure. You gotta be able to pick a good cloud provider. So we move into cloud. It helps us to not only mitigate potential exposure from data compromise, but more efficiently, you can now do multi-tax projects on that. So right now, almost 100% of our stuff is in the cloud. We use 3 vendors. One that handles our website, which we call our portal. Then we use another one to handle our write-up, and then we have one for our tax. And I did it on purpose, because, if you all know about Amazon Web Services, it does crash every now and then, So I did my screening to figure out, okay, you're a cloud vendor, who supports you at the back end? Is it Microsoft? Is it Amazon Web Services? Is it, they kind of give you a list. And from there, I used it to say, okay, I want this company to handle, write-up for us, and then I want this vendor to handle tax, because they are both supported differently. One is Microsoft, the other one is Amazon Web Services. And it's been working great. Pretty pricey, expensive, but I think it's worth it, when it comes to IT, to support, yeah.
So you're saying new firms should consider cloud technologies?
Yes. I strongly would recommend that, yeah.
So before we hand it over to our honorable council member, one last question on the same growth strategy for Mr. Ibrahim. Marketing and client acquisition are critical for growth. What strategies have you seen best that work for accounting firms from your experience in this area?
So, because of our target base, what is very important, to FinServ Pro is how do we reach them? How do we get to them? As I mentioned, 90% of our clients are immigrants. And when you come into this country, you are still watching your Yoruba movie. You are still going on Instagram, checking, Instablog, checking Tunde Ednot. You are still watching AY Live, for example. So one thing we did, the first thing we did was to host a comedy show. We sponsored a comedy show in the DMV, and they had over 1,000 people come for the comedy show. And then all of the comedians that came on had on our shirts. They came up, talk about our services, and people kept wondering, what business is this? And for some, out of curiosity, is this a big company? Who are they? Where did they come from? All of a sudden, FinServ Pro all over Maryland, so people kept reaching out. If there was a guy who came in here, he's a musician. So we signed 4 brand ambassadors, musicians, comedians, actors, Richard Mufedamijo, though not one of our official ambassadors, but at least is out there talking about our companies. And then you would sometimes, see us feature, like post our promotional, advert on Tunde Ednot. Tunde Ednot used to have over 7 million, followers. And most of these followers, you'll be surprised, are living in diaspora. And every time he posts, we would have nothing less than 200 followers. Sometimes 10 people would call, oh, you're in the United States, I need this. Some would even call us from UK. I want to send your number to, a family. Is that okay? Yeah. So having to, get on platforms, such as, Instablog Niger, Linda Ikeji, Tunde Ednot, sometimes even on October 1st, a movie is going to be premiering. I'm one of the executive producers. It's titled The Perspective, talking about Nigerians, living in the United States. At the cinema, you are going to be seeing FinSaf Pro all over. So there is no how you would attend, events like that. Events that are organized by Nigerians, Cameroonians, Sierra Leoneans, right? And then you see this company, you would reach out, right? And then we make sure that when you come, we do what is said. We educate you. The way we retain our client is to educate, because we know that every immigrant, the first thing they are looking for is that education on how to make it, right? Everybody that comes, even Nigerians like you, sir, that is not even looking to stay. Sometimes you would ask, so tell me, how is American, be? How is it? Yeah. You're going to ask?
Mr. Renner, you're moving to the realms of client relationship. We'll come to that later. But meanwhile, let's hand it over to a council member to provide this perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think you've used AI to pick my brain and steal my question. I was actually going to ask both Mr. Okafor and yourself in terms of the marketing strategies. What did you do? Was it direct marketing? I've heard, you've answered the creative marketing approach and using, non-conventional, strategies, to which it's quite impressive, I must say. But from your point of view, what did you do to really scale the business and to create that market presence impression out there? Was it something similar? I think it would be quite different. Then I also have a question for Mr. Adeyemo. Financing was your big challenge, from what I heard from the beginning. Is it that there's no access to, grants, minority support programs that businesses that are starting within our cluster of, the demographics I'm talking about, that they can access, that can help them power their business at that startup stage? I'm just thinking back. I was in the US about 3 years, and I know I worked on a number of not-for-profits. I knew they had such things those days. Are those things no longer applicable for businesses who are in that organic growth stage, that people can access to support, so that they don't go through the same struggle you went through?
Great question. So for me, totally different. So vision, typical small business owner. The typical small business owner is an individual, middle-aged, individual, husband and wife, and they don't know TikTok, they don't know Google or whatever, Facebook, all that stuff. So they are busy running their business. By the time they make it home, they're already exhausted. So what we did was a 2-3 pronged, one is, we do direct call, so we know new businesses because each state has Secretary of State. It's a public information, it's a public database. You go in there, you download every week, every month, new businesses. Existing businesses also, And then we call, and we say, okay, Okafor and Associates, we're here, we do bookkeeping, payroll, services, tax, are you looking for one? You'll be surprised. Number one, oh yeah, my accountant just died, passed away, so I'm looking for a new one. Okay, and you all do tax? Yeah, we do tax preparation. So we set up an appointment for them to come in for folks like that. Another one would be similar, my accountant messed up, I got audited and I paid a lot of money to the IRS, I'm not happy anymore, I want to change. Come on down for consultation. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a free 1-hour consultation, Then another one is the typical new business owner. Naive, don't have any clue, nothing, looking for help, So from the calls, that's basically what we got right there. And then there are referrals, that you do a good job, and then their friends or neighbors, will ask them, who do you use for, your business books, totally different from your tax preparation and stuff like that. We do that too. So that's pretty much where we started in terms of marketing side of it. Then as we grew, then we had the leverage to now pick cream of the crop, so to speak. Not the marginal, the one that you do the work and then it's hard to even get, exactly. Lucky enough, we don't get into the haggling of fees. Our fees is set. So you take it or you leave it, basically. I mean, that's just the way our, it's not, hey, it's this, no. Now we can do the work, and then, but before we finish the work, then we're gonna get paid first before we release the information, stuff like that. Yeah. So that's the marketing side, and it has worked for us, all these years. Meaning that we get referrals. People see us on our website. People get referrals to us, and we take them and we turn them out, turn them down too. Because you can only do so much, at a given time.
Yeah, that was a very good question. Well, talking about finance, for me in the beginning, I think the main reason the finance was very critical at the time was the fact that I was a little bit ambitious. Okay, when I came to the United States, actually, I didn't come to stay here. I came to come on a conference actually for 2 weeks. And I was a young guy, working at the bank, doing ICAN, making a few change, at the bank. So I had a little change, in the beginning. But when I came and whatever happened. So I decided to stay back, actually. Then I stayed at my grandmother, who was about 80-something, and I thought if I should go back to Nigeria at the time, given the money that I spent on that trip, she may have a heart attack and die, so I kept. So when I decided to start my business, I remember I started my business even before I joined the Fortune 500 company. So that was a strategy, and I was married at the time. You marry with children and everything. I actually got some loans. I got some student loans. Open secret now, part of the student loan was what I used to start the business. So I kept at it, so then I transitioned into corporate. So now I had that funding. Unlike Carrefour that had the stock option and all that, so I wasn't eligible for stock option at the time. So you have to build your 401k and all that. So that's just a function of time at which you enter the system. So with regards to marketing, what we've been able to do is that in the beginning, we had more of individual clients, and I had a very open policy, anybody that comes with service. But we'll send out like birthday cards, Christmas cards, and things like that. So sometimes the client will call you, thank you, maybe the only card they receive during the season. So after that, similar to Carrefour, I decided to transition from individual because they give you more headache than the thing. So I went from individual, then I decided to go corporate. So when I made that shift, we go to like high-rise offices, even some of our individual clients, they just kind of self-eliminate, because when they see you, say, where's your office now? Say, that suite, so, they say, ha. So, so that kind of helped out. But even at that, at the end of the year, we do what we call client appreciation. So we organize dinners, and we invite them, then we ask them to bring a friend or a colleague or a business partner. So, and we focus a little bit on the special healthcare side. So when they come for the dinner, we spend the first couple of hours to talk about the industry matters. So usually we pick a client or two. So I didn't do the typical social media and things like that, but we have about 95% retention, there, because once you come, I warn them. You come in as a client, you stay as a family. So, and that has worked.